politics can be so complex and there are so many different aspects of civics to teach. But what aspects of civics in particular do you especially see a gap between how much people understand it and how much people should understand it? And in which one of these are in your new book?
So I think that's a really good question. And to me, it sort of relates to a similar question that I get all the time, which is just basically like, what should people know? Right. So if I'm constantly talking about how there is this lack of civic knowledge among average Americans, what is lacking exactly? What is it that people know that don't know that they should know? And so I spent a lot of time researching for the book, talking about the history of civic education in America, but also looking at the current state of civic education in America. I looked at a lot of different researchers in terms of what kinds of questions they were looking at when they were judging civic knowledge levels across Americans, and just sort of boiled all of that down to what I like to call three buckets of information that every average citizen should know about the way that their government works. So there are three buckets. The first bucket is, we'll call it the rules of the game. So people need to know how our government is structured and why it's structured that way, right? So the history of it kind of plays into that. Why do we have three branches of government? Why is our Supreme Court separate? Why is the justice system independent? Why, all of these different things, right? And so how our system is structured, what the rules are, that's the first bucket. The second bucket is the game's major players, right? So most people need to understand who the president of the United States is, which I think we're doing pretty well on that. No issues there. But I
Yeah.
definitely think that people also need to know who the vice president is, who the Speaker of the House is, who the Senate Majority Leader is, right? These are our leaders in Washington. Who are the people that represent you in Washington, right? Who's the member from your House district that represents you? Who are the two senators from your state that represent you? Who's the governor of your state? Who are your state legislators that represent you in your area, right? And then also at the local level, so at the national, state, and local level. At the local level, who's your mayor? Do you have a town council or a city council, and who are those people? Is there somebody that represents you in your particular area? And so I think that those are the first two buckets that people really need to sort of wrap their minds around. The first one, the rules of the game, we're doing okay there, but I have some statistics that I'm going to cite in a minute to show you that, like, not as many people as you would think understand what the three branches of government are and the sort of basic rules. And then when it comes to key players, if any of you guys are old enough to remember, Jay Leno used to do this thing where he would go out on the street and ask people basic questions.
Jaywalking
um, yes, and so if you see
is jaywalking segment.
anybody
Yeah.
who anybody who's done anything similar to that, where they ask people questions that you think they would know the answer to, like who's the vice president or who's the Speaker of the House, you'd be surprised that there are a lot of people who actually don't know who those people are, right? And it's just important to know who are the people whose actions are going to affect your life. And that's why you need to know, right? You don't need to know just for some trivia game, right? You need to know because these people's actions could affect something, that you do in your daily life, or a program that you take advantage of, or something along those lines. So it's the rules of the game, the players of the game, and then the third bucket is the issues that are being discussed, right? So people should have just a basic understanding of, when the president is talking about healthcare, people need to know what the ACA or Obamacare, they need to know what that is. They need to know what Medicare is. They need to know what Medicaid is, right? So that when politicians are talking about different, their differing opinions on what should be done with these programs, you know what their suggestions are going to do in terms of how that's going to impact you, right? So if you are a young person, let's say, and you aren't on Medicare, so you think you don't have to care about it. Well, what about your grandparents? What about older people in your life that you do care about, right? Those people may be affected. And so it's important for you to understand what the program is and how it works. And, the same thing with, we've got a lot of foreign policy issues that are going on right now, and everybody doesn't understand all the nuances of what's going on, right? But you just need to have a basic understanding of what's happening there so that you can understand when politicians are talking about things. To me, what's so important when it comes to civic knowledge is not just having this knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? It's not just, you just need to know this stuff because you're a citizen. And so as a citizen, you need to know this stuff, right? It's because it's for a reason. It's all for a purpose. And that purpose is to hold politicians accountable, right? The whole way that our system works is it's the voters' job to hold politicians accountable for their actions, right? We put people into office, we vote for them in a representative democracy to make decisions on our behalf and to take actions on our behalf. And so when they take actions that we don't like, or when they make decisions that we don't agree with, then at the next election, it's our job to hold them accountable. Now, if they are doing things that we like, then it's our, sort of responsibility to help to keep them in that position because we like what they're doing. And so that's just, how the system works. And if you don't understand how the system works, um, then how are you supposed to play your very critical role of holding politicians accountable? And I do want to say also that I mean this not just as some veiled, attack on Donald Trump. I also mean politicians who are closer to your local level, right? I also mean politicians who may be in your political party. You need to make sure that you're not just looking at the label, but you're also looking at what these politicians are actually doing and what they're saying that they're going to do when they're running for election. And then make your decisions based on that in terms of, instead of just making it based on whatever the party is.
And that's such a great point about the accountability aspect. That's one of mine. Obviously, I try as best as possible to practice what I preach and to be self-aware. Is just this whole I there is a huge problem we have with accountability. I personally believe we do a poor job of it because a lot of people think accountability is just going after the flaws of the quote unquote other side. If you're only taking to task people who don't agree with you, that's not real accountability. Real accountability comes from
Hmm.
holding people accountable that think more similarly to you. So if it's Republicans with Donald Trump or if it's with Democrats with their own party, doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be held accountable because nobody's infallible, and voters have to be held accountable too. We all are accountable
Absolutely.
to some degree, but yeah, I do appreciate all those points and really that whole breakdown of those several buckets. I think that's a really great way of putting it too, and especially with the local level, because it's not just we don't or people don't know about their local level, and to a lesser extent the state level.